So I walked in this morning to Tefillah, saw Mr. Shabot over here, David Shabot, sitting over here. It happens to be, I was about 2 months ago on Lawrence Avenue. I saw him over there. It looked familiar. He came to visit his friend, Ezra Asa. I guess Ezra has a lot of interesting age group friends, different. But so I was thinking, we just finished Parashat Yitro. How Yitro, of course, convert, whatever, he came and he left everything. So we take for granted that we're Syrian, so we grow up in the Syrian community with everything is there. And he has an unbelievable story. Now just going to taste a little taste of it. I'm sure if he wants to tell us a lot of stories, I'm sure we could be here for hours. But I thought maybe he'll give us a few Devrei Hizuk, B'chavod.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, good morning.
It's an honor to be here. I get to finally see what this is all about. And I have to say, it's almost as good as the Kollel in Long Branch. Anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. My parents were both born in Brooklyn, New York. 3 of the grandparents were from Aleppo, and one was from Hebron. And I ended up growing up in Troy, New York. So my father opened up a store in Saratoga, New York, in upstate New York. And we ended up living in this small town, Troy, which was basically a reform and conservative, congregations, I guess. And so I grew up in a conservative synagogue, and I had a Bar Mitzvah and all that stuff, but pretty much lived in a secular environment, went to public school, and went to college afterwards, and pretty much drifted away from Judaism, although probably never drifted away from searching. So I always knew there was something more than just this world, but nonetheless, it was a bit difficult living in basically a goy world that I lived in. And so, I soon got sucked into that whole society and became part of it. And as time went on, I became less and less and less and less. And one day we decided to move to Long Branch, New Jersey, my wife and I, since we were living in Philadelphia with our children previous to that. So about 7 years ago, we moved to Long Branch. And, here we are living next to the ocean, beautiful thing. Everybody would have looked at me from the standpoint from the outside and said, this guy's got a lot of things. He's got everything going for him, kind of thing. I had a nice family, had a great life, had a great career, all that you really would want, except I woke up one morning and my wife was screaming at me about something, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I sat there and I went, I got to get out of here. And I literally left the house, put on a pair of shorts, had no socks on, sneakers, a white t-shirt from the night before, red shorts actually, someone told me. I never remembered that one. And I headed on the bike, and about 4 miles later, I see a synagogue on the right-hand side. And I sort of see this guy in the parking lot. It's about 6:25 in the morning. It's the summertime. And I said to him, can I come in and just sit down? And, he said, I said, I'm dressed like this. He says, I guess you can. And so I proceeded to go in, and they were in the Beit Midrash praying. And I just walked in the door, and I sat in that first seat and just sat. And I didn't do anything and just observe what was going on. But I was just so in my own world and so troubled at that moment that I didn't really know what else to think. And some guy over on the other end over there caught my eye. And a couple of minutes later, he caught my eye again, and he came over to me, and he says, can I help you put on tefillin? And I said, I guess so. I said, I haven't put on since I was 13 years old. And so he went and he got some tefillin, and he, I didn't know what to do with it really anymore. So he went and he started to wrap it on my arm. And as he started to wrap, tears came down my eyes. I'm not sure it was a religious experience at that point. It was an experience, but it wasn't a religious experience. But I think I just had to let go. And it was a form of that happening. And so I walked out that morning, and I walked out a little happier than I was when I walked in. And I said, I'm going to come back here tomorrow. And so I came back the next day and I sat down next to this guy. And I brought my father's tefillin. And he said to me, "Are you a lefty?" I said, "No, I'm a righty." He says, "Well, this is for a lefty. My father was a lefty." So I said, he goes, he gave me another pair again. The next day I brought my Bar Mitzvah tefillin and he says to me, he goes, "Boy, these don't look very kosher. I think I'll bring them to Brooklyn and see if they can be repaired." And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what that even means. Does it need shoe polish or what does it mean? Kind of thing. So he, I've learned Gemara since then, so I understand it now. But so anyway, I come back the next day and he says to me, "You can frame these, you can do anything you want with them, you can't wear them." He goes, "I'm going to buy you a pair of tefillin." Now, I don't know what a pair of tefillin costs at that point. And I sat there and I said, "All right, you don't need to, but you guys, I want to buy you a pair." Next day, a pair of tefillin sitting on my seat. By that time, I had looked up how much these things cost. I went, "What's this? This guy doesn't even know my last name yet, and he's buying me tefillin." So now I'm a little bit obligated. This guy's bought me a nice present, right? And but at the same time, I'm feeling good about being there. And so I come back each morning, and I was only doing shacharit at that point. And he, a couple of days later, I said to him, "I am totally lost in this service. Everything's in Hebrew. I'm not used to that. And secondly, I said, they're going so fast, and I'm anxious about it. I mean, it's not making me feel comfortable being here." He says, "Take 3 prayers, just take 3 prayers, and just focus on those, and forget everybody in the room." So I paid attention to that, and I picked the Ashrei, I picked the Shema. I thought that thing was only 2 paragraphs or something at the time when I knew my Shema. And I took the Amidah. And so I did that, and it took me, they were done before I was finished, let's put it that way. So I had, my reading had been really slow at that point in life. And so I just kept going on with it. And then one day I'm sitting there and I'm wearing a, talit. I'm not used to the Orthodox talit. I'm used to a shawl, kind of thing. All right. So I'm in there and I'm saying, this guy, his name was David. I said, "David," I said, "why is this talit keep slipping off my shoulders? Do I have round shoulders? Am I not doing it right? I don't see anybody else doing what I'm doing." He goes, "Oh, you need a non-slip talit." I said, "Oh, non-slip talit, what's that?" So he says, "I'm going to get you one." So the next day, a talit on my seat, a book on my seat. A couple of days later, just to be short here, but a couple of days later, I go upstairs and they had breakfast upstairs in Lawrence Avenue, Shul and Deal. And so I went upstairs and I'm walking down the hallway and I see people walking into this room. So I said, "Let me go see what's going on in that room." So I walk in and it's a small, I think it was the Rabbi Mansour's office. And I walk in and I see some people learning, about 7 or 8 people sitting around a table. And I guess there's a rabbi there. I don't know who he was at the time. And I'm listening. And he went on some tangents and it caught my attention. I didn't know what they were talking about in terms of what the Gemara was. And I didn't even know what Gemara was. So it didn't matter. I didn't understand it. And then about 4 days later, I went in there and I said to him, I had to raise my hand. I said, "Rabbi, I don't understand something." I said, "I've been here for 4 days, but you keep talking about the same thing." And everyone laughed a little bit, and I understood what the Gemara was about a little more. But nonetheless, I haven't left that class since. And it's now been 7 years. I think we finished our 5th Masechet since I've been there. And I have to say that I've learned a lot about Judaism. But then I had to sit there and say to myself, okay, here's this Torah. Do I believe in it? Is it really? Do I believe in Hashem? Do I really believe? And if I believe, then I got to follow what this Torah says. So I went home and I started to say to my wife, I want to go back to having a kosher home. I want to be able to do this. I want to do that. And I shocked the whole family. I shocked them. I put them into a total shock because all of a sudden I had turned 360 degrees. So, my kids felt I abandoned them. You mean your kid, my sons, my grandson, my daughter would say to me, my son's soccer game on the Sabbath is less important than your Shabbat? I had a hard time because they didn't grow up that way. So yeah, I had to say yes. I can't do that type of thing. So I had a lot of difficult times, very hard times. Hashem tested me down to the ground. He pushed me down so hard. But I stayed with it. And I can't tell you how much appreciation I have for Torah learning, how much I try each day to see if I can connect closer with Hashem, because I think really in the end of the day, it's all about being in that light of Hashem. And if you're not in that light of Hashem, your life can fall apart in a second. I had the whole circle, except for a little piece of that circle, open. I had everything you want, but that little piece was open. And when that piece opens, guess what happens? Everything else can fall out. Hashem closed the gap. And I tell you, growing up in a society where you've already been in this, growing up as people, it's hard for me to understand that, other than to say, I wish I was that. Now, some people say, I wish it was this, but the fact is that I have a great appreciation because I learned it as an adult. I came into it as an adult with a lot of understanding of life. And so from that point of view, I take this very seriously. And each day I pray that I can only get closer to Hashem and to be in His light. Thank you.